everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Darylyn, and today we are talking about that Kaylee Ellen video. That's right, pink Congos, white Congos, pink Micans, pink Melanochrysum, all of that jazz. I didn't think we were gonna have to talk about plant scams again, considering I just made a video about this like a couple of weeks ago, but here we are. Because no matter how you feel about her one way or another, Kaylee Ellen is right. The plant community does have a scam problem, and I don't know what it is specifically that is endemic to the plant community. There's so many people out there trying to scam people out of their money. It's especially frustrating because so many of us are just here trying to have fun and enjoy ourselves. It is difficult, honestly, buying plants. So I guess let's just start like talking about what the video was about, and then we'll kind of talk about scams in the plant community more broadly and kind of like some things to watch out for. But essentially on Friday, so a couple of days ago, Kaylee Ellen dropped a new episode of Dish the Dirt, and she basically went all out, going after people who are still trying to sell Philodendron Pink Congo. And now there's a lot of other iterations of different plants that are chemically treated to bring out color that the plant A, would not have without the chemical induction, and B, will not persist if the plant is not continuously exposed to such a chemical. It's kind of weird. Ever since that video went live on Friday, there's all these old threads from all these Facebook groups talking about chemically induced color in plants and talking about the pink Congo and this scam and whatnot that are like popping up in my feed, and I don't know if it's like the Facebook algorithm or if it's people watching the video and then like searching for pink Congo in these groups and then like commenting on all these old threads, but they keep popping up. And it is weirdly fascinating to me how many apologists there are in these groups defending the practice or saying that the plants are like so gorgeous and like they don't care that they're chemically treated, they want them anyway. And like, I don't know. To me, that comes off as a little suspicious. I wonder who could possibly have an incentive to convince people that even though the plants are chemically treated, they're still pretty and you should still buy them. I wonder. But it's really funny too, like on top of that, there's like all these people like trying to play devil's advocate saying that it's a cultural practice. It's a cultural practice in Indonesia to have these chemically treated plants. And I'm not really sure like what they're trying to say by saying that like chemically treating plants to turn them colors is a cultural practice in Indonesia. I mean, I think what they mean is that these plants down there are a popular like floral arrangement item, as like a novelty for like parties and things like that, like a decorative novelty floral item. Somehow like logic their way to like, because it's used this way in their culture, it's okay for them to like be sold however. And like, of course that doesn't work. Two things can be going on here, people. On the one hand, the plants could be a popular novelty item for holidays and other things in their culture, and simultaneously some of the sellers of these items could be engaging in fraudulent and deceptive and scammy sus business practices, trying to milk more money out of them, selling them on the rare plant market. Like, two things can be true and two things can be happening simultaneously. And like, long story short, like Kaylee Ellen's video, the recent one, and then the one that she put out like 2 years ago, goes way more in depth into this and like exactly what's going on with these plants. But like, long story short, essentially, there are some plants that if you treat them with certain chemicals, it will suppress their chlorophyll and the leaves will turn different colors than they ever normally would be. And a couple of years ago, there was a plant called the Pink Congo, which was like a green plant and it had pink new growth. It was being sold as kind of like a Florida ghost where the leaves emerge white and then they fade down to green. So they were trying to convince people that the leaves emerge pink and then they fade down to green and the new growth will be pink. They really banked off of the knowledge that like the Florida ghost is a real thing and the Philodendron Pink Princess is a real thing, and kind of like extrapolated it all into this notion that, oh, this plant has pink new growth and it fades down to green and the new growth will be pink. And of course, that was a scam. That was not real. These plants were only giving out pink leaves because of the chemicals that they were being treated with. So back then, these plants were being sold for a lot of money, like $200 each back at the height of the plant boom. Now they're not going for anywhere near as much. And so the scam has kind of shifted from it being like just all out, the plant is being completely misrepresented and you're basically being sold a lie, to yet another iteration of a classic scam that you'd see all over the place. And it's not just in plants, but that is to essentially offer something that seems too good to be true and then bank on the fact that once the purchaser receives the item and figures out that they've been scammed, they don't want to go through the hassle to get such a small amount of money back. And then the vast majority of people will just be like, oh well, and not come after the buyer to deal with such an annoying process to get a small amount of money back. You see this a lot on Amazon, where household items and other things like that will be listed at ridiculously cheap prices. And then come to find out when you receive the item, it's like this big. This happened to a friend of mine last year. They ordered a greenhouse on Amazon and it was a ridiculously cheap price. And then lo and behold, when it arrived, it was a greenhouse for ants. It was very, very tiny and small. And not only was it not like a big greenhouse, but the price that they paid for it was kind of a lot for like a cheap, tiny greenhouse that like isn't useful for anything. It wasn't really like a ton of money in the grand scheme of things. So they just kind of like laughed it off and chalked it up to like, oh, I should have paid more attention to the details and read the dimensions. But at the same time, it's like, no, it was represented as ambiguous. See this in fast fashion too. A company will come up out of nowhere and like buy a Facebook and Instagram like ad campaign, and they'll have all these pictures of these really, really cute clothes, and then they'll say it's like a sale and all these cute clothes are on sale, and then you buy the clothes, and then once they come, they're like horrendously like cheap knockoffs of the clothes that you thought you were purchasing. They're not at all the quality in the photos. In some cases, they aren't even wearable. But then when you go back to try and find the return policy, it turns out that you're not actually dealing with this company. You have to actually return the clothes to the manufacturer directly. And they're on the complete other side of the world. And it's like a whole hassle. And in the grand scheme of things, it's like, it's really not that much money. Am I really gonna deal with this like whole hassle to return these clothes when I probably should have known better in the first place? That, I think, is like where we are in the evolution of like the pink Congo. I do think though that with some of the other plants like the pink micans, the pink melanochrysum, and the pink dark lord, they are still kind of trying to like deceptively convince people that these plants really do put out pink growth and it's like a mutation or something. It's not, they're just chemically treated. But with the pink Congo, I do feel like it is at this point where you're just not gonna try and like deal with the hassle to get your money back because it's like a seller on the opposite side of the world, and like you can't get your money back for phytosanitary and you can't get your money back for shipping. So at that point, like what are you even really fighting about? And the sellers know this. They just bank on the fact that you'll be too lazy to come after them, or you'll think that their disclaimers of they're selling the plant as is and final sale and no refunds or whatever will deter you from going after them. So that is essentially kind of like what's going on here. And yeah, that's probably one of the more like egregious and like well-known scams, is like these plants that are actually just fake. But even beyond that, the plant community, like dealing with buying plants is just rife with deceptive business practices and scams. And it really is, to me, just such a shame, because I do think that the majority of people who inhabit the plant community online, or who got into like buying and selling plants online, they started because it was just their hobby and they were here to have fun. Having to navigate all of these deceptive business practices and scams and just general like shadiness and misbehavior to enjoy your hobby, like I can see why a lot of people are just like not dealing with it anymore and are leaving the hobby me or are signing offline and just doing it on their own, because it's just like not fun and it feels really icky, and it kind of makes you feel like icky by association to know that you're associated with people that behave this way. So I guess the point of this little like discussion is just to kind of impart the information that I have, put it out there. I don't know, maybe like somebody will find this insight useful, but I guess aside from the fact that yes, like plants can be chemically treated to have variegation that isn't natural, and to just keep an eye out, like if you're looking for a plant and it just like has color that seems sus, like it's just better to walk away. And if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. There's a lot of other kind of like ins and outs of soft, deceptive business practices when you're trying to buy plants that I guess I just kind of like want to go over, because this is the reason why when people ask me like who I bought my plants from, who I imported from, or like how do I import, like what are your tips, like I'm really reticent to like give tips. I just would feel really bad if you got taken advantage of, because I have bought plants from people that have behaved in ways that I did not appreciate, I guess, to put it lightly. And so I would feel really bad if I ever recommended something and then somebody had a bad experience. So aside from just like full on like fake plants that are not what they're being represented as, some other things that you really have to watch out for as far as deceptive business practices that are unfortunately really rampant in buying and selling plants are things like, you know, being led to believe that the plants that you're looking at are the exact plants that you're going to receive, and then having that not be the case, being shown plants in bad lighting or deceptive angles that hide the fact that they're much, much smaller when you get them, sellers like making the import process sound like a lot easier than it is, dealing with sellers who really push spending, you know, $500 on air cargo shipping for your plants and then don't actually know the process of dealing with air cargo, picking air cargo up. And I don't want to see anyone in the comments saying anything along the lines of, well, you should have done your research, because there's a lot of things with importing plants that you can't just find on Google, because the people who know what they're doing, it's proprietary information. Like, why on earth would anybody that imports plants for a living like go into a Facebook group and be like, here's a 10-step guide to like doing my job so that you don't have to pay me to get your plants shipped in? Like, that doesn't make any sense. If you can't find the information on Google, like why wouldn't you trust what the seller is telling you to do? But at the end of the day, like a lot of these sellers really just don't know how customs works in the United States. Like, you would think that they would have just like picked up the phone and called at one point and thought like, oh, maybe I could get a competitive advantage if I have a better understanding of how US customs works than my competitors, and I can increase the chances of my customers having a positive outcome. But like, it seems to be like none of them have figured this out. Being misled about what condition the plants are in, being misled about like how hardy they'll be in shipping, being misled about how well they're being taken care of, like corners being cut, pest control not being done, the plant could be rotting before they, you know, ship it out to you, and then they try and blame it on shipping and say, nope, that happened in shipping, it was fine when I sent it. Plants being misidentified and sold as something that they're not, that just incidentally happens to be worth a lot more money. And this isn't just unique to one locale or to importing or whatever. There's deceptive business practices just buying plants domestically. There's deceptive business practices buying plants from plant shops, from licensed ones. You just have to be extremely careful. So what I would say is that before you buy a plant, make sure that you understand the terms and conditions and the return policy. Think about it and decide if you're okay with that and if you're okay with potentially losing the money you're spending. If the answer is, I absolutely cannot lose this money, then don't do it. Like, don't go through with it. And this is actually like one of the reasons why I always do recommend that people buy plants from Ecuagenera. And I know that this is probably going to be controversial. There's going to be a lot of people that have opinions about them. That's a whole topic for another day. But if you buy a plant from Ecuagenera and you contact their customer service within like the first few days, I think it's 3 days, with an issue, they will try and help you troubleshoot the plant and save it. And then if it dies, they will either replace it or refund you. Same if you order a plant from them and the specimen is just dead on arrival, they will either refund you or they'll replace it. There are so few plant sellers out there that have have the scale and the inventory and the size to be able to do that. And so, you know, that's why I always recommend them, because like they will work with you and they will try and give you good customer service. This is like not the case with like 99% of other sellers. Like most plant shops, it's like no refunds, no returns, no money back guarantees. Like once the plant leaves our hands, it's completely up to you. And you know, and that's for a good reason, because there are a lot of buyers out there who try to scam sellers. They will try and get something for free, and a lot of like really small businesses just can't afford that. So I get it. I guess I just wanted to come out and have a little discussion about the fact that the plant market is rife with scams and deceptive business practices. Unfortunately, you know, I think as Americans, especially, I can't speak for other places, but in America especially, consumers have a certain level of expectations when it comes to like getting what they pay for. And I don't know the ins and outs of all the laws, but when you're buying a product directly from like a company as a consumer, if it's not what you thought it was gonna be, or if you paid for something and it broke or died or just generally isn't functioning, 99% of the time, it's pretty easy to get your money back. Most stores have return policies. With most of their products, you know, like a 30-day return policy is really common in most places where you're buying things. The plant market's not like that, and there's good reasons for it. But I think this expectation of like getting what you're paying for and like honest business practice transfers to plants, like erroneously perhaps, but it's just a different world. So if you are someone who is kind of new to plants and is thinking like, oh, you know, I might start experimenting with importing some plants, and I really want to get some good deals and get some plants from Indonesia for cheap, like just know that it's not as glamorous as you think. And I don't really recommend people do it unless they are really understanding of the fact that like they can lose their money. I also just want to reiterate that if you are making a purchase from someplace like Etsy or eBay or whatnot, look at the return policy and the grievance policy with the platform, because for the most part, if you are working with someone like Etsy or eBay, like their policies like weigh really heavily in the buyer's favor. So for example, a year or so ago, I ordered a pretty large shipment of plants off of Etsy. What was really weird to me, a couple of things that were kind of like red flags, and this is just an example, but a couple red flags that I noticed right off the bat with this situation was that the seller almost immediately wanted to start communicating via email rather than through the Etsy site, which was a little weird. And they also told me that, so after I paid, they kept emailing me saying like, did you pay? We haven't gotten the money. And I was like, yes, I did pay. The money left my account. And they were like, we never got the money. Here, you can pay us through this link. And you know, we've canceled the Etsy transaction. And I kept going in and looking and being like, it hasn't canceled. Like I still don't have the money in my account. It's still gone. And I'm 100% not paying you through this like random wire transfer like thing. It seemed sketch to me, so I reported it to Etsy, and yeah, they were like really immediate in responding to it. Basically, I explained that, hey, I paid for this order via Etsy. They're telling me that they never got the money. It's left my account. I think that they're either trying to get me to pay twice, or they're going to cancel my order through Etsy after I send them the money, and then I won't get what I ordered at all. Etsy was like on it, and they like dealt with it right away. And I actually also like filed a claim with my credit card too, and they were really helpful. And they even like dealt with Etsy, and that way I didn't end up with like a double claim or whatever. But just keep in mind that you can file a grievance through Etsy, you can file a grievance through eBay, you can file a report with your credit card. And that is why it's so important to never pay for anything like that with like Zelle or a wire transfer or anything where you're not protected. PayPal goods and services is a lot of times considered like the gold standard of like secure transactions. But I have actually heard a little bit that they're no longer insuring plant plant purchases because just of all of the different issues. However, you know, if you pay through goods and services and then your plants die in customs, it's a little bit of a different situation than if you pay through goods and services and it turns out that they don't ever send you your plants, or the plants aren't as advertised, or some other kind of thing. So you may still be able to go through them. And then the other thing too is to just like really keep an eye out and stay vigilant. Even if you're in an online community that feels like safe and familiar to you, because there are lots of scams being run through Facebook groups, out of Facebook groups. Some common ones are like people will post beautiful pictures of plants in a group and then everybody will like it and say, oh, it's so beautiful. And then they'll DM people and say, oh, it's for sale, and, you know, try to get you to wire them money or whatever. And then they'll just disappear because they don't actually have the plant. Another one that is like a newer one, I think, is that they will start trying to discuss, you know, a purchase with you, and then they'll accidentally Venmo you money or like wire you money, and then they'll ask for you to send it back, and then you'll send it back because you've already started having a little bit of a rapport with this person, and then they'll disappear after you've sent the money back. They'll cancel the original transaction. So as a result, it's like really common to see posts in these groups outing scammers, and the admins in a lot of these groups, like they seriously, like they work so hard to try and keep these online spaces like a safe and fun place to enjoy our hobby and to buy and sell plants. But the scammers are not giving up there. You know, the new thing is that they're just creating whole groups with names that are really similar to large popular groups and enticing people to join their groups and then running their scams out of there. So I know that this is like kind of easier said than done, but if a situation feels a little bit weird, just trust your instinct. And if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And don't let your like maniacal desire to get a wish list plant for a good price override your sense of better judgment, because it's just not worth it. Like, it's always better to walk away. Like, and on top of it, the plant market fluctuates so much. Who's to say that in a couple more months, whatever plant that you're trying to get now for a good price won't be available for even cheaper? So I would really just implore you and anyone watching and anyone, you know, impart this knowledge on anyone that you talk to, that it's just not worth it to ever pay more than you can afford to lose for a plant for numerous reasons, including the plant could die, shipping could be bad, customs could be bad, but also just because like it could just legitimately be a scam. Always ask for a reference if it's a seller that you don't normally work with or it's not a licensed plant shop. Just be careful. So I hope that this was helpful advice to maybe some people out there. Hopefully it was entertaining for others. I am pretty exasperated by just how scammy and like sus some corners of the plant community can be. Hopefully I don't have to make another video about this again anytime soon. And also, if you haven't already, check out the Plant Myths, Scams, and Conspiracies video I put out a couple of weeks ago. I also recently put out a video called What to Pay More For, which is kind of just like tips and tricks about, you know, buying plants and like what is worth paying more money for versus like cutting corners. So check that out too. Hopefully we can all help each other to have fun in our hobby and not get scammed, and to usher these bad actors right out of the community. But I know that's easier said than done. So that is going to be it for me for today on this. I hope everybody has a good one. Bye.